Dear students, in this lecture we will talk about software health. What do we mean with software health? Terms like software evolvability, modifiability, and maintainability reference to code level health. Then there are other names for poor health conditions like technical debt, bad code smells, and anti-patterns. Also during this lecture we will cover reasons for poor software health. You might remember the Lehman's laws from the previous lecture. For example, the law of increasing complexity that occurs during software evolution that makes the software health degrade. If you do not, please go to the previous lecture and check those out. Then we will also look into 7 deadly sins causing poor software health. Here are the 7 deadly sins for lack of software health. Well, actually, I made them 5 deadly sins. The 7 deadly sins came from this book, or they comes from this book, Anti-Patterns, but I adapted slightly to make it a bit easier to understand. So let's have a look at these 7 deadly sins. First one is haste, or rush, or deadline pressure, or time pressure. So under time pressure, we tend to cut corners, we try to go too fast, and as we go too fast, we make mistakes. We also lower our standard of quality, so anything that appears to be working is considered acceptable. Concerning the speed, there is so-called speed accuracy trade-off, which pretty much states that the faster you're trying to go, the more mistakes you will make. So on a high level, we could say that time pressure is bad and is causing bad software health. However, it is actually a bit more complicated because science shows that the proper amount of time pressure is good. So what is a proper amount? It is not too much and it is not too little. And one might consider, how can too little time pressure be a problem? Well, too little time pressure can lead for being wasteful, being greedy, doing too extensive design, doing cold plating, like the next problem. Too little time pressure also signals that the project is not important, no one cares. So you are programming this task and then you ask when it needs to be ready, and your manager says, well, whenever. It sort of brings out that this is not important, it doesn't matter. So it sort of signals a lack of commitment, which is, again, one of those other sins. So too little time pressure is also problematic because it leads to being wasteful, it leads to being not committed. So you should be mindful on having a proper amount of time pressure in order to have a good software health. On a more general level, these deadly sins, time pressure is actually the one that has been has most scientific evidence behind them. We know this kind of well that the proper amount of time pressure is good. So this is what science says. For the rest of these deadly sins, for the rest of the 4, they are more anecdotal. So the scientific evidence behind them is not as strong. But you can sort of reason around also these 4 remaining sins as well, and how they work. So let's have a look at these as well. So the next one is greed. And there is 2 types of problem here, or 2 examples given. So you can do too extensive design. You try to anticipate everything. So you anticipate all the future problems and needs that might come handy in the future. And this is not really a proper approach. I mean, you do too much for what is needed. And this actually goes also against those agile principles. So you might get greedy, you design too much, and then you have too extensive design for the stuff that you need to do. So this is on the design end of being greedy. Then in the other end, there is what we called cold plating. So you do too much. You work certain feature or functionality beyond what is really needed. So you add all the bells and whistles and everything. So you go too far, like when finalizing the feature. And as said, this gold plating and also the too extensive design can be caused by lack of time pressure. Then we have the next one, which is ignorance. I mean, you apply a certain solution because you don't know any better. You don't know any better solutions, so you just do something that's not good. And if we think about these things here on the left, these are sort of acceptable deadly sins. I mean, the developers are not really blamed for them. I mean, they might have deadline pressure, they might get greedy, but this is also okay because they are trying their best. They're trying to do the best they can. So it's also sort of understandable. And also ignorance, if you don't know about a certain better solution, then you cannot really apply it. I mean, if you have never heard of databases, and then you just implement your data storage as a file structure instead of using a database, so then you cannot really be blamed. Maybe the manager of yours can be because they didn't ensure that you are properly educated in computer science. But anyway, so the left side is sort of okay. So now we move to the right side, which is sort of not okay deadly sins or not okay reasons for creating bad software health. So here on the top right, I have combined two deadly sins under the title I Know Better. So you think you know better, but you really don't. And this could be caused by narrow-mindedness. You basically refuse to utilize widely recognized effective solutions. So in this case, you actually know that there is a sort of a solution, but you don't want to use it. You want to do it sort of your way. And this is very closely related to pride. It's kind of like, it's not invented here syndrome indicates that if something is not invented in the house or in the organization that is using it, then they are less likely to use it. If it's sort of like invented here, like in this place, I love this is my baby, then you want to use it. Another manifestation of pride could be inventing rather than researching. So you have a problem in the code, you don't know how to do it, then you think really hard, you think about the solution, like after 2 days, you come up with the great solution. Okay, great. And then you implement it. Okay, the problem is solved. But what if there is already a better solution to the problem? So you could have maybe used the search engine for 15-20 minutes and found a better solution rather than inventing yourself something that is sort of your baby. So, using effective solutions outside is usually a good idea. And the idea that I know better, well, it's better to do the research than think that you know better. Okay, so finally we have a lack of commitment. I combined here two deadly sins from the book. Apathy, which is not care about solving the problems, and laziness, poor decisions based on easy answers. So they both go under this sort of lack of commitment. You don't care. You are just working there and so on. But as like said, it might be that the lack of commitment is a management error. Like if there is no deadline pressure, it is sort of not seen as important. But on the other hand, too much deadline pressure can also bring lack of commitment. When you see that the deadline is totally unrealistic, then you just, become apathy about it. So just like anything goes. So yeah, this is the sort of final of these sins. And as stated, take these with a sort of grain of salt. Well, beyond the time pressure thing, that is well investigated. But these four, yeah, they are anecdotally, you can think of them as true, but the science behind them is not necessarily very, very solid.